It's Don here from the board. I guess what you would have seen then would have been the two time lapses in regards to me testing this 3018 Pro CNC, and what I was trying to cut out was some 1U switch testing holder thingamadoobies. Now, just quickly running through it, if you haven't seen it before, when I did the 3018 normal version, not the Pro version, I basically use Gerbil and easel only because that's something readily available and online. So easel, which is part of Inventables, they do the Xcarve machine. They have this web GUI that allows you to go on there and draw up stuff and actually export the Gerbil file for use. So I've had this file previously from the old machine, and I adapted it to suit the smaller piece of timber that I had, and exported the Gerbil file, loaded it into Gerbil, and ran it. Now, what you would have seen as part of that was the first lot, it didn't go to plan because I'd only used masking tape on the outside to hold the workpiece, and it was shifting, and then it completely came off and it sliced through the side of it. So I reset it, and I went and found my double-sided stick tape, and I stuck the workpiece down onto the actual bed underneath, and that gave it much better, cleaner results. And with cutting 2 through 7mm of timber, this is just pine that I'm working with here right now as part of that test piece, whereas previously I was using plywood. You can see it estimated 43 minutes to do the cutting, and it took 47 minutes to cut these two. And the set rate that I had on this was 300 mils feed, 50 mil plunge rate per minute, and it was moving 0.2 of a mil per unit. I was using a 1.5 mil Drill Pro bit. Now you can find any reviews on that from previous because it's the same as before that I was using. So what can I say about this? Now the first thing is, if we have a look at this, that's where it went off the side because the workpiece actually separated with the tape. And because I was only using masking tape, you can see the cuts aren't straight because every time it was pushing in an axis, the piece was just shifting slightly, and you're getting these funny curves, and then it broke off and went funny. When I secured it with the double-sided tape, we now got really nice, clean, sharp cuts, followed the pattern correctly, and milled it beautifully. Now this is 7mm timber, and I set the cut depth to 7mm. I didn't set it to cut all the way through by adding an extra millimeter or two, and the result is that you can see it's just broken through, and you can see the light passing through. That's how thin it's actually made it through that workpiece. Now if you look at it from that side, it looks quite solid, but in reality it isn't. And if I just turn on the torch with my phone, okay, you'll be able to see that it is actually quite thin all the way through there. It's a little bit thicker on the top there, but the actual sacrificial piece that I've got here isn't dead flat, and so I think with that it was slightly tilted at an angle, so it wasn't milling all the way through, which is why it's generally advised that you want to add about 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters to ensure that you cut all the way through when you do your cuts. Now I'm going to use a 13mm chisel because I was in the hardware store looking for a 14mm chisel. Nobody seems to have 14mm chisels, so I went with the closest, which was the 13mm, and there at least you can see it went through some of that pretty easily. Just gonna go flip through the other side. It'll fit. I don't know if this will work or if I'm just going to damage the piece that I've made. It probably will damage the piece. Oh, there we go. I've leveraged it. Hey, there we go. Right, so I've just gone and ripped out that little chunk because that was the thinner one. The top of it's good and clear, so this was measured to be 14mm. And with the calipers, you can see it's, if I do it correctly, all the way at the top. Hello, focus, 14 mil. So I'm really happy that it actually held the accuracy that I was after, and the switch should sit all the way in. Look at that, neat and flush all the way around, and just a little bit of that peeps through the bottom. So really happy with that. Now of course, if I take the time to just use my fingers and punch it out. Whoa, I lost that one. So there you go, that's how much material was just left fractionally holding on, and of course I can just clean that up with a bit of sanding and the chisel, and that'll clean up quite nicely. There you go. So that's the other piece that broke off, just a very thin sliver that it could have gone through. Another mill and it would have just cleaned that up quite nicely. Hasn't really ripped out too much extra timber around the other side of that. So what can I say? Very happy with its performance. It did squeak a bit, and I was having a bit of a traumatic flashback to the 3018 in that the rod was jamming and it was causing a lot of that squeaking. But I went and got some of my classic sewing machine oil, which is what I've got here in this bottle, since my wife does a lot of sewing and we have 2 sewing machines and 2 overlockers. I put some on both the rods and the drive screw for the left and right axis, and also on the ends of the bearing, and it got rid of that squeak after a couple of passes, so it was really good. And then afterwards, which wasn't shown on the video footage, I flipped it on the side and I did the same thing and ran the platform up and down and the Z axis up and down to oil that to help smooth it out and give it a bit nicer movement. In regards to comparisons, the last time I tried to cut something with the 3018, this is what I got. And this is the plywood, so you can see the layers of the ply there. In terms of comparable thickness, it was 7mm ply, so pretty much the same. But what I found struggling with it was because of the slippage on this rear blue collar, it wasn't cutting dimensionally correct, and that's why it was moving up as it was cutting, because in one direction of the turn of the adapter it wasn't catching and it was slipping, and so the rod wasn't turning as far as it was meant to be. In terms of the cleanliness of the cuts, I think they're quite comparable, but I do feel that having this thicker frame does give it that extra rigidness that you're after. It was cutting quite nicely, quite cleanly. It wasn't giving a lot of extra vibration. I checked all the actual bolts afterwards and didn't really require any additional tightening on the majority of them. There was only the front ones here of the actual base frame needed tightening, but the rest of it held on really well. So there you go. There is a cut test of the 3018 Pro to make little 1U switch testers. I'm really happy with the results. Now, what does that mean for other projects? Well, plenty of things, I guess. I just have to find a way of adapting images, lines and things like that into a toolpath, and then I can start cutting, and it's just a matter of time. And of course being able to clean up things like that or cutting through. I suppose the only major thing that I'm going to say as a negative on this is that the height is not going to give you a lot. Between the ER11 chuck and the workspace, even if you rack this all the way up with a drill bit sticking out, with your cutting bit sticking out, you are very limited. For doing small thin things, it's fine, but you don't get a lot of workspace at all. Thin flat things, no problems, but it's just something to be aware of. When they talk about 4 centimeters of work height, 4 centimeters work height, you're not going to get 4 centimeters of work height You really won't. You've got 4 centimeters of clearance, but you're not going to get 4 centimeters of work height with the ER11. Now, you could move this spindle up, but you're going to lose the majority contact against the spindle block that it's designed for. Obviously, that's a risk to take, and how much you're willing to take that, and you're still going to be limited by the fact that the motor is going to clip the stepper motor. So they're just some things to take in mind, to consider. I don't know if I'll be doing a lot more videos on testing this, because it's actually working and there's nothing that I'm having to fix or resolve. Like, after this initial cut, I'm probably happy enough that if I've got enough material available to me, I might have a go at cutting something a little bit more intricate, delicate, difficult, different, using the bits that I've got, and seeing what will happen with it. In any case, very happy overall. This is definitely a keeper for me. It's just a matter of space and time to use it, because obviously it takes up my entire desk. And it's very loud. It measured about 70 something decibels, so running that for 40 minutes while the family is here is also not really pleasant. That's it. Wrapping up there. Thanks for checking out the video. Thank you, Banggood, for sending it to me for review again. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do want to check it out yourself, obviously there should be some links in the description below, so you can check it out, maybe get it if it's on special and things like that, and get going with your own projects. Right, thanks. Like, subscribe, share, you know the drill. And of course, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.